ready. I don't think a whole lot about the titles of these talks when I give them, but I wanted to call this one the KISS talk, okay, keep it simple. And then I never really appreciated, I thought it was kind of not nice that they would say, KISS means keep it simple, stupid. So I wanted to change that to keep it simple, seriously. And then I thought, well, maybe I should change it around a little bit and call it SKISS. Seriously, keep it simple. But that didn't work either. So we're back to KISS. So here's one of the reasons I wanted to keep it simple. I'm going to do a reading. You don't need to put your hands in a hot chunk for this. This is just some interpretation. But these are from the, this is Nagarjuna's middle way. And the reason I got into this is that Bapang's fault. He gave a talk some 6 weeks ago on the middle path. And I thought, wow, that's good. I'm going to look into this. And here's why I'm having some difficulty. Here, the difficulty in mutual reciprocal causation is spelled out. Important. If the primary origination originated the origination of the origination, while the origination of the origination was originating the primary origination, then the primary origination would have to be able to originate something before it came into existence. And that is clearly impossible. Everybody knows that. The opponent will thus proceed to try a new tack. He's doing these Dharma battles where they fight over, the Dharma fundamentals and stuff. I was telling teacher, we had lunch on earlier this week, and I said, well, I feel like I would be kind of unarmed in a battle of the Dharma. These guys are way, way beyond me. And there's another one here I thought it was also in order. In order for something to produce, it must already exist. But to exist, it must already have been originated. So in order to originate itself, it would have to bring itself into existence after it had already been brought into existence. Hence, it had to be produced a second time. Now, those things, I think, are just a real good way of talking about the middle way and about emptiness. And what those readings just said, everything is the result of causes and conditions. So that's the KISS part of this. Keep it simple. Everything is the result of causes and conditions. Now, Nagarjuna, now I've heard some people say Nagarjuna or Nagarjuna, I don't know, but the diacritical markings on the two A's were the same, so I kind of pronounce them the same. So Nagarjuna, he gave us the philosophical defense that all things are empty. And we had the Heart Sutra, and we talked about that today. So these are some of the basic fundamentals. And I want to talk about the fundamentals, the basic fundamentals of some of our Buddhist practices. And I know this is only a short talk, so we're going to really gloss over some of this. And if any any clergy has any input, please, you're welcome. Now, Nagarjuna gave us his arguments about the middle way and about emptiness in verse form. And the reason he did it in verse form, he lived about 150 to 250 in the Common Era, and there wasn't a lot of writing down there yet. It was coming, of course. But by putting it in verse, it made it easier for the monks to memorize. And so they would memorize the verse, and then after the memorization of the verse, then they would have these Dharma talks and Dharma battles and discuss what it all meant. Now, the reading that I just read, it just means that all things are empty. All things come due because of causes and conditions. Nothing can come of itself by some independent or unchanging entity. Nothing originates itself. We just read that. I fully understood it when he said nothing originates itself. I don't think he needed to put in all those origination words in there for me. Now, to fully understand Nagarjuna, I would need help. I would need a Dharma class. I would need meeting people and discussing this and doing it. And so that's one of the things I would like to think about doing sometime over the next year, is getting into some of these fundamental ideas here. I find Nagarjuna kind of challenging, especially at my age. I wasn't going to bring this in, but it kind of fit, I think. That, you know, I'm in my mid-70s. I looked up in the National Library of Medicine a paper by Timothy Salthouse, and I looked at cognitive decline. Up until the age of about 55, there's very little cognitive decline. So if you're under 55, you're cool. Don't worry about it. After the age of 60, it starts to become a little more prevalent. By the time you're in your early 70s, it's fairly noticeable, and then by the time you're in your late 70s, it's even more noticeable. So I've got a couple of years here of understanding what's going on before I develop cognitive disassociation. Now, one of the things, though, don't take on a sedentary lifestyle, and lack of exercise in a sedentary lifestyle will facilitate this cognitive decline. My wife makes me walk 3 miles every day. I don't know what she's trying to do, but anyway, Bhikkhu Bodhi, you've all probably heard of Bhikkhu Bodhi. He commented that, you know, through the overdoing of analysis, there could be agitation. I believe that. My initial thought when I read that comment was, no kidding. No kidding, that's true. So let's go with the fundamentals. What do we want to have as our fundamentals? Well, the first fundamental thing that we embrace with our Buddha, with our Buddhism, is the Four Noble Truths. And we all know what those are. That's very fundamental. There is suffering. There is a cause of suffering. There is an end to suffering, and there's a path to lead out of suffering. The fact that there is suffering is not hard to grasp. I mean, the Buddha told us, old age is suffering, sickness is suffering, separation from those we love is suffering, birth, death are suffering, being around people we don't want to associate with suffering. So there's a lot of suffering. And the cause of all this suffering is generally craving. We crave and we attach, and because everything is impermanent, we're going to lose it, and so that brings along suffering. Now, the Four Noble Truths are also based on, and this is where Nagarjuna comes in, on the 3 marks of existence, or they're also known as the universal truths. And these universal truths are everything in life is impermanent and always changing. So impermanence is the first part of the mark of existence. And because nothing is permanent, a life based on possessing things or persons does not make you happy. It doesn't make you happy. And so that's the second part of, that's the suffering part of the 3 hallmarks of existence. And finally, there's no eternal, unchanging soul, and the self is just a collection of characteristics or attributes, or no self, the third characteristic of existence, the third mark of existence. And so, yes, as Buddhists, we have this, we don't have the belief in a supreme being. We don't have the belief in a non-changing soul. There's karmic winds in there, and I don't think we can get into all that right now. But the 3 marks of existence resulted in the Buddha's 4 Noble Truths. There is suffering because of impermanence. The reason we strive for permanence is because we are insecure as humans. We want to be permanent, but we're not. Now, one way that we can be permanent is to have a soul or to believe in a God. Because if you believe in God, you believe God is permanent. If you don't believe that, you may be able to accept other things. Sorry, I forgot where I was going to go with that, but bear with me, it'll come back. But humans have created a God because they need permanence, and they want that God to provide permanence. They also need protection, so God was created to protect. And that doesn't mean I'm saying that there is no God. I don't know that. I'm just saying that what the Buddha taught was a little different than what we have with the God or gods, because there are many gods. The fourth part of the Four Noble Truths is the Noble Eightfold Path. And we all understand the Noble Eightfold Path. That's very fundamental. There are wisdom factors, there are ethical conduct factors, and there are concentration factors. And the wisdom factors are right view or right understanding. So what is right view? Well, right view is knowing the Four Noble Truths. Right view is knowing the three hallmarks of existence: impermanence, no self, suffering. Right thought or right intention is also based on right view. These are all tied up together. Then the ethical conduct factors, they're fairly easy to understand. I think it's right speech, right action, right livelihood. Right speech isn't just not lying. Right speech is not dealing with any harshness of speech or gossiping or stuff like that. And we can get into each one of these individually, but obviously time won't allow that. Now, when you're studying the fundamentals of the Buddhist teaching, I think, for me, the source for me to go to is the Satipatthana Sutta. And this is personal, but I mean, that's my favorite sutta. I mean, it tells me everything that I really need to know about the fundamentals. It's the cornerstone and the ontological starting point for understanding what the Buddha taught. Now, with the Satipatthana Sutta, we're taught that the means to establish awareness or to develop wisdom that follows a logical progression of ideas and concepts. And the sutta starts off with the four foundations of mindfulness. So that's mindful of the body and the body. That includes the breath and the four elements of earth, fire, water, air. It all kind of comes together. Mindfulness of feeling tones in feeling tones. We know whether something is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And we attach to the pleasant, we avoid the unpleasant, and we're kind of in the middle about the neutral. Mindfulness of the mind in the mind, we all think. And then mindfulness of objects in mind. After the four foundations of mindfulness, and the sutta spends a lot of time developing that, and so you do want to read that. And I would encourage you to read the Satipatthana Sutta, not once or twice, I mean, with some regularity. And you think about that also in your daily meditation. And if you have a daily meditation, that's great. If you don't have a daily meditation, try to develop it. It will serve you well. I promise you this. Then the Satipatthana Sutta goes on and then talks about the five hindrances. Now, we've talked about the five hindrances before. Sense, desire, anger, sloth and torpor, agitation and worry, and doubts. Those are hindrances to our happiness, our joy. And they're hindrances because they're all internal. They're all starting from within. And if you can let those go, you're going to be much better off. And the Satipatthana Sutta then goes on and mentions the five aggregates of clinging. We cling to a lot of things, especially our body, our mind, ourselves, our family. We cling to it. And the five aggregates of clinging are form, which our body. We want this body to last forever. It's not going to. As much work as this body took me to get to with all the ice cream and the potato chips, it could probably go away without too much drift calling. We have feeling. We have perception. We have objects of mind, and we have consciousness. And again, those aggregates of clinging, along with the sense bases, and we just read the Heart Sutra, and the sense bases are eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. We just said it in the Heart Sutra. And those are the internal sense bases, and externally they talk about, they bring in vision, hearing, odors, taste, and tactile senses, and objects of mind. So each one of the internal sense bases has an external sense base, and a consciousness associated with it, like eye consciousness, ear consciousness. And the sense bases are important for us to understand or to realize, because nothing comes to our awareness or our feelings and perceptions outside of these sense bases. Nothing comes outside of these sense bases. So everything is a cause and condition, back again to causes and conditions. And with the 5 aggregates of clinging and with the sense bases, we have the establishment of dependent origination. Now, in dependent origination, it says everything is dependent on something else. Now, there are 12 articles in that, and just briefly, I mean, ignorance, volitional formations, consciousness, name and form, they all feed on each other. It doesn't go in a linear fashion, but in a kind of a circular fashion. They all feed on each other. But dependent origination is a key building block for all Buddhist traditions, and it encompasses the philosophical points of this is this because that is that. This ceased because that ceased. This is not this because that is not that. Everything has a cause and a condition. Then in the Satipatthana Sutta, it goes on to mention the 7 factors of enlightenment. And these I really like them. And the 7 factors of enlightenment start off with mindfulness. And mindfulness in the Pali or the Sanskrit is sati, S-A-T-I. The 7 factors of enlightenment are, mindfulness, investigation of dharmas. We investigate. We look at things in an objective fashion. We develop an energy with the factors of enlightenment. We develop rapture, tranquility, concentration, and then finally equanimity. And equanimity is not necessarily non-judgment, that's part of it, but equanimity is more of a non-partial, impartiality. If we're impartial, that's one of the 7 factors of enlightenment. And then finally, that leads to what some of my favorite things to talk about are, the 4 Brahma Viharas, or the 4 immeasurables. And the 4 immeasurables are loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. Again, equanimity in the 7 factors, equanimity in the 4 immeasurables. A lot of this stuff goes back and forth and ties it to each other. And for all of the above reasons, when we develop our Buddhist course, we then take the 5 precepts if you want to be a Dharmakaya. And that is, don't take a life. Don't harm, do no harm. Don't take any life. Don't lie or use speech harshly or gossip. You know what speech is all about. Do not steal or take what is not given. Do not engage in sexual misconduct. And do not use alcohol or drugs to heedlessness. This little thing that I just presented is what I would call a gross oversimplification of the fundamentals. But due to time constraints, I just wanted to throw it out there so that as we go forward as a Sangha, maybe this is a type of study course that we can develop. And I would be more than happy to consider anybody who wants to do that. That's all I have. Are there any other, how about the clergy? Do you have anything to add on this? You're welcome to.
Could you start from the beginning?
Yeah, sure. This is a KISS talk. There's a smart ass in every group, isn't there? All right.